Senators are expected to vote on another House plan when they meet again. As both sides blame each other for the stalemate, the American people will suffer. Some 800,000 federal employees are being told to stay home. CNN's Christine Roland has more.
Thousands of federal civil service employees are waking up to their new furlough status.
Our economy is going to be affected by it, and that is scary. It's too much for normal middle class, lower class people to deal with right now.
All across the country, national monuments, zoos, and parks closed for business.
Along with the government shutdown comes the closure of all the nation's national parks, and that includes Lady Liberty. So for folks coming to New York to see the iconic Statue of Liberty, this may be their last chance, and who knows how long.
Welcome aboard Statue Cruises Lady Liberty.
Tourists like the Dubois are dealing with not only writing off a paycheck,
He works for the government,
but writing off their vacation plans as well.
There's not much I can do about it. So I'll just, if I'm furloughed, what furlough, and we'll just deal with that.
The shutdown is sure to take a toll on the employees at these iconic sites as well, like those who work at Liberty Island.
Has a big impact on their check.
So my only source of income.
And not only are employees at national monuments staying at home today,
And we have liftoff.
97% of NASA employees are closing the office doors on the agency's 55th birthday. Down to D.C., the Washington Monument, Smithsonian, and even the National Zoo closed for business.
The National Zoo is a ghost town. It's been closed since 8 p.m. last night. Now, the National Park Service says that anything that's a safety function will continue to be funded. And any employee that comes here to feed and take care of the animals will continue to do that. But if you want to see the pandas online, too bad, even the animal cams are going dark.
When they're shut down, it really takes away from things that families can do.
Locally owned businesses around the Hill worry that lack of tourists will dry up their income as well.
D.C. might be the next Detroit because when half the city's unemployed or doesn't have a paying job, this could become Detroit in close to 2 months.
And across to the mountains, national parks taking a hit too.
In the Angeles National Forest, this morning, the crown jewels of the park system, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, Yosemite, all closed. Anyone now in any national park allowing camping has 48 hours to vacate.
We've been coming to this park for 35 years, and this is not fun if we have to get booted out.
It's very frustrating. I mean, we invested quite a bit to come out here to, to see this, and it's going to be a huge disappointment, huge disappointment.
NATO is carrying out military exercises in the Mediterranean Sea, but they are designed to show modern military might. They also hope to prove the alliance as well as big Navy fleets are still relevant. CNN's Ivan Watson looks at some of the state-of-the-art technology on the aircraft carrier cover.
Ships at sea, a show of force by the NATO military alliance in the Mediterranean. 23 ships and thousands of sailors and airmen from a dozen countries performing joint exercises to prove that this 64-year-old military alliance can still defend itself in the modern world.
This joint force has to be ready if the nations of the world and NATO calls on it.
NATO forces have been fighting in Afghanistan for more than a decade, and the alliance helped defeat Muammar Gaddafi's troops in Libya just 2 years ago. But NATO is not being sent to intervene in the biggest crisis in the region, the civil war in Syria.
The situation in Syria has not generated the same kind of consensus that we saw 2 years ago in Libya in favor of international military intervention, and the military options are not as clear-cut in Syria.
Spanish special forces simulate boarding a hostile ship that could be smuggling weapons of mass destruction. But these drills are not just demonstrations of combat readiness.
Part of the goal of these exercises is to convince cash-strapped European governments to continue paying for hugely expensive defense programs like aircraft carriers and navies in general.
To some critics, big navies are relics of a bygone Cold War era, and tough economic times in Europe have not helped.
What we're hoping to see as the financial crisis begins to improve is to see the members of NATO collaborate more in developing military capability to get more bang for the euro or more bang for the buck.
On board the Italian aircraft carrier Cavour, it can sometimes feel like the set of some science fiction movie. Italian admirals boast about the cutting-edge technology here, while also stressing flexibility. They say this carrier was converted into a floating hospital that helped treat victims of the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. A combat ship that can also play a unique humanitarian role. That's basically what NATO is calling the aircraft carrier of the 21st century. Ivan Watson, CNN, aboard the Italian aircraft carrier Cavour on the Mediterranean Sea.
Monday's news of the death of 36 refugees who drowned off the coast of West Java in Indonesia has sparked a row between Jakarta and Canberra. It is believed they were trying to make their way to Australia by boat. In Jakarta, key talks have been held on asylum seekers, and as Anna Corrin reports, the issue has generated a lot of tension between Australia and Indonesia.
It's Tony Abbott's first overseas trip as Prime Minister, and one that's been overshadowed by the contentious asylum seeker issue. At the heart of the problem, Australia's Stop the Boats policy. He wants the Australian Navy to tow vessels carrying asylum seekers back into Indonesian waters. Abbott's also proposed buying up fishing boats and paying locals for information on people smugglers. A move Jakarta has said is a violation of its sovereignty.
We had a very frank discussion about issues of sovereignty and about issues of people smuggling.
Each month, hundreds of asylum seekers from countries like Afghanistan, Iran and Iraq board rickety boats along the Indonesian coast to make the dangerous journey to Australia for a better life. Many don't make it. The recent drowning of dozens of asylum seekers, many of them children, a tragic reminder of the risks involved. But 27-year-old Mumtaz is not deterred. Fleeing persecution in Pakistan, she arrived in Indonesia 2 months ago with her 3 children and elderly father. Here I am not safe either, she tells me. We have nothing to eat, nowhere to go, no place to stay. We have no other choice. And there is little sympathy from Indonesia, a country that refuses to sign the Refugee Convention, giving legal rights to asylum seekers.
They give us a burden, socially and economically. When they want to make their way to Australia, they also burden Indonesia. So in this spirit, to enable Indonesia and Australia to solve their problem, we have to work together.
In the short time that Tony Abbott has been in power, he and his government have managed to offend the Indonesians. And while he may describe this relationship as Australia's most important, the reality is, as long as boats packed with asylum seekers keep leaving these shores bound for Australia, this issue will continue to place a strain on these two nations. For now, though, it's a unified front being presented to the world and to people smugglers.
We are determined to end this scourge, which is not just an affront to our two countries, but which has so often become a humanitarian disaster in the seas between our two countries.
And as long as the boats keep coming, this humanitarian disaster will continue. Anna Corrin, CNN, Jakarta.
Before we end this edition of the news, a reminder of our headlines. Investigators are advancing probe into the activities of 4 men who are in police custody for their alleged involvement in actions bent on tarnishing the good image of the Gambia. The National Disaster Management Agency and partners have gathered for a 2-day training on data management as part of efforts aimed at strengthening the Gambia's disaster risk reduction capabilities. The U.S. partially shut down for government for the first time in 21 years, rendering close to 1 million federal workers temporarily jobless. And Australian and Indonesian leaders have held talks on asylum amid a row over the recent boat accident involving migrants off the coast of Java. That brings us to the end of the news. Thanks for the pleasure of your company. Stay tuned and enjoy GRTS programs.